And we are live. Finally, it is Jack Murphy Live Show. I am Jack Murphy, and I have with me today a guest I've been dying to talk to for a long time, the one and only Jesse Kelly. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm good, man. I'm excited to come on with you, and I'm excited to eat a double cheeseburger as soon as I'm done with you, Jack.
Fantastic. That was exactly what we were talking about in the sound check, the double smokestack from Shake Shack. That is a good business right there. Although not for me right now, buddy. I'm on my post-COVID extended bulk summer cut. Got to look good for the summer, man. Got to look good for the summer. What about you, Jesse? You getting in shape for the summer?
I am, and it actually sucks. I started about a month and a half ago. I always try to maintain. I try to do that thing where you just maintain what you've got. And then we have a lake trip coming up this summer, and you can't just go be hanging out, flabbing over your swimsuit at the lake. So I have been better and buckling down more, but I'm not enjoying it. They say, that fat or food will never taste as good as skinny feels. Women say that all the time. That's a bunch of crap. Yes, it does. It tastes way better.
It does taste way better, but there's nothing like scheduling something in advance where you know you're going to be naked out there with everybody, at least half naked. Get your ass in shape, guys. Get your ass in shape, guys. Drop that COVID 50. I know a lot of you guys picked that up. All right, Jesse, the goal for me here today, buddy, is I want to get to know a little bit about you, my friend. I have observed you on Twitter. I have watched your show. I have heard the takes, but I don't know the man behind the man, Jesse, and I think some other people want to know that. How did you get to what you're doing? Why are you doing what you're doing? How did you get here? Did you grow up thinking this is what you're going to be doing, man? Was this your lifelong dream, or were you going to be like a power forward?
You're just forgive me if I filibuster for a few minutes, Jack, because I fell backwards into this entire thing. This whole thing is a humongous accident, and I have no idea why any of this has worked out at all. I am white trash as white trash comes. I come from a construction family. I was born in Steubenville, Ohio. I don't expect people to know where that is. It's right down on the Ohio River, basically.
Beautiful.
And I grew up in a tiny town called Toronto that's even smaller than Steubenville. And it's closer to Pittsburgh than anything else. And we were just a construction family. It's what my dad did. It's what his dad did. When I was about 10 years old, my folks decided they didn't want to live there anymore. The pollution was terrible. It's like one of the highest cancer rates in the country, at least it was. It's really, really bad. This is back when they're just dumping toxic sludge into the river. We used to go catfishing down there, and you can't eat them. You just eat them, and you catch them, and you toss them back. It was that bad.
25-pound of fish, just throwing it right back.
Oh, it was heartbreaking. So we moved to Montana, and I understand it's probably a little too cold for most people, but it's just the most beautiful, clean place you can imagine. And I grew up doing construction, washing dishes, washing golf clubs, doing anything I could to get by, and hunting and fishing. And when we would knock off school in high school, when other people would go to a house party or sneak in a club or something somewhere, we'd throw our guns and our sleeping bags in the back of our car and as much beer as we could carry, and we'd drive into the mountains. And that's just what we did. That's how we had fun.
That wasn't high school. That wasn't high school there he was talking about. That was definitely college he was talking about after you're 21. That's what we're talking about.
Definitely college. No question. Definitely. I would never break any rules, Jack. So speaking of college, I managed to finish in the top two-thirds of my class in high school, I should say.
Top two-thirds? That's incredible, dude.
Top two-thirds. It's very impressive. I don't want to brag or make anybody feel bad. I go to college because that's what you're supposed to do, right? Everyone, you go to college. Graduate high school, you must go to college. That was that whole thing.
100%.
And I go to Montana State University. This is in Bozeman, Montana. Beautiful. And I got a 0.0 grade point average my first semester. And that is not a lie. I actually think I still have the transcript on my website. Don't quote me on that, but I have it up. 0.0. Obviously, it was a fun semester, not the most productive thing in the world. Did a little better the second semester, and then I realized I probably should grow up a little bit. This is a little immature and not the kind of man you want to be. And I just decided I was going to join the Marine Corps. I had always admired Marines and veterans, and I thought that, well, the Marines are the toughest and the best, and I need to grow up, so screw it. I'm going to go be one of those guys. Walked down, didn't tell my parents, didn't tell anybody, walked in the Marine Corps recruiting office and signed up right then and there. My parents were furious, absolutely furious. They were so bad. I've stressed them out so many times.
How old were you when you joined up?
Go ahead.
How old were you when you joined up, Jesse?
18. I might have, maybe 19. No, 18. 18 or 19, right on that threshold. I was about 19 by the time I actually went, so I was probably late 18 when I signed up.
What year was this?
just a lanky, skinny kid that was an idiot and needed to grow up.
Yeah. What year was that? I'm trying to get an idea of what the military environment was like at that time.
This was 2000. I was in from 2000 to 2004. So this was pre 9/11. I wasn't one of these super patriot types who saw the towers go down and went and signed up the next day to go kill some people. I just happened to fall backwards into that whole thing too.
Right.
So I joined the Marines. I go infantry, which made my dad even more upset than he already was about me joining the Marines, because I took an ASVAB test. That's what they called it then. I don't know what they call it now. You take this aptitude test, and I must have cheated because I killed the thing. I absolutely murdered on it, and I qualified for any job I wanted. And I'm this young, full of testosterone, 18 years old. I don't want any of these jobs. I want to be in the infantry. They handed me the book with all the jobs in it, and I'm all, no, give me a weapon. I want to go kill some people. Joined the infantry. Served 4 years. I was in the Iraq invasion. We were in the beginning of that whole thing, from Kuwait all the way up to Baghdad and back again. We did all that. Got out of the Marines, moved to Arizona. My folks had since started their own construction company, which ended up doing great. I'm so proud of them. And I wanted to go back into construction. That's all I'd ever known. So I moved to Arizona, and I'm just going to school at night at community college down there while I'm working construction. And I start to get into politics. I'd never been into politics before at all. I'd always geeked out on history and that kind of stuff, but never politics. And I just decide one day, because Barack Obama's running and I hated his freaking guts, that I was running for Congress. Out of the blue. No one knew who I was. I'd never run for Congress before, never run for anything before. And I was like, I'm running for Congress. And everyone told me I was insane. And I was insane, of course. But it turned out I was actually pretty good at it. I would travel everywhere, give a speech to anybody. I would meet everybody, and eventually the Republican Party throws in some big shot state senator who's supposed to steamroll me, and I ended up just pounding him into the ground. I just pounded the guy, and I won. I won the primary, and then I went up against Gabrielle Giffords, the one that got shot, and I only lost by 4,000 votes. They had to do a recount for a week to make sure I lost, but I lost. That was a few weeks before she got shot. I ended up running again and losing. I'm getting to the story of how I ended up doing this, by the way.
I'm into it, man. I'm into it.
While I'm running for office, you have to do a bunch of radio and TV. That's just inevitable. You're going to go on the local conservative talk show, try to get yourself on whatever news channels you can. So I started doing that stuff, and I was pretty good at it. And at one point, there was a huge local conservative talk show host there called John Justice. He has since moved on to Minnesota. He's still a friend of mine, but he was the guy everyone listened to. And I'm waiting in a studio across from his studio, and I'm talking to somebody on the telephone. I forget what it was. It doesn't matter. I get done with my call, and I hang up, so I'm waiting to go on with John Justice. And some guy walks through the door and says, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Jesse Kelly. Who are you?" And he said, "I'm a producer with ESPN. Have you ever done radio before?" And I said, "No, I'm just a construction guy, whatever." And he said, "With a voice like that, you should do radio." And he turned around and walked out. And I never forgot it, and I have no clue who he is. It would never even occurred to me before, but it did plant a little seed in there.
Yeah.
All right, I finished losing twice, not to brag, running for Congress, and I moved back to Washington, D.C. because I had been asked by a political group back there to go back, help them raise money, do that kind of thing, and I wanted to stay in the fight, I go back to D.C., and I've got a wife, 2 kids at this time, and I hated it. I'm a big manners guy. I know I'm a sociopath and a jerk and all these things, and I don't deny any of that, but I'm big on manners. Yes, sir. No, sir. Hold doors open for women. There's old people up there. Run up there, hold the door open for them. I'm just very, very big on that. That's important to me. They have the worst manners in D.C. of anywhere I've ever been in my entire life. I couldn't stand it. It grated on me. Yeah. And I go in a Subway one day with my son to buy a sub. And again, I grew up in Montana. Granted, I've been to really, really terrible places in the world, but I grew up in Montana. We go buy a sub from Subway, and I'm having to pay for and receive my sub through the turnstile of bulletproof glass in the Subway. And I have a moment that day. I'm thinking, what am I doing? Why am I raising my kids here when I can be, screw it. So once again, I know everyone's going to find this shocking. I do something really dumb, and I quit my job with no other job. And I have no place to live. I quit my job, and I throw my family in a car, and we drive through Red America because I decide I'm going to find work in a place that has the values I like because I think it's a better quality of life. And I just drive, and I'd love to tell you it was this huge success, right? It was a colossal failure. And I'm talking 4 or 5 states. I'm running out of money. I'm running out of time. I'm applying for jobs. I'm not getting anything anywhere. I end up clear in Dallas, Texas, and that's as far west as I want to go. And I love Texas. I've done a bunch of construction work here. And we walk in a church on Sunday that we loved. Well, we thought we were going to like it. We walked into church on Sunday and we looked around. We're like, you know what? We're moving here. And we just packed up everything and we moved across the country, still with no job, to an area where we wanted to live. Well, now I'm out of money. And now I have kids to feed, wife to feed. I go on Craigslist looking for a job and see an advertisement for RV sales. I go apply. And of course, kids, listen to me. I don't care what the job is, whether it's your first job dropping fries at McDonald's or whether you're trying to be CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Wear a suit and tie to your interview. I don't care what anybody tells you. I don't care if you're overdressed. Wear a suit and tie to your interview. I showed up that day. This turned out to be a 6-figure job. I showed up that day. There were several other guys there in various forms of raggedy dress. I'm the only guy standing there in a suit and tie. They hired me on the spot. Wear a suit and tie to your freaking job. Turns out I was pretty good at sales.
Yeah.
I ended up becoming sales manager in a year. I just was killing it. I did so well, they moved me to Houston where they started this huge mega store and I was sales manager there. So life's good, right? But I'm kind of miserable. I'm not doing what I feel like has a purpose for me. There's nothing wrong with RV sales. I'd highly recommend it if you think you have the stomach for it. You make yourself a boatload of money, kids, by the way, with no college degree. But anyway, it's not really for me, but I'm doing it. And I start getting more active on social media. Well, I put up a post, I don't even remember what it was about, but there's this gigantic radio star here in Houston. He's national, he's coast to coast, called Michael Berry. He's my mentor, a good friend, I owe him for life. Gets a hold of one of my social media posts, sends me a message and says, hey, you want to come on the radio, talk about this? He didn't know I'd ever done radio in my life. I'm like, yeah, sure. I go on the radio and I just murder on his show. He keeps me on 2-3 segments. I'm just killing. I've got everybody laughing. It's a good time. And hang up and I don't think about it. I'm driving home that night. Been a long day. I'm pulling in a drive-through to get some garbage food somewhere. And I get a phone call and it's Michael Berry. I'm all, wait, what? And this is a big deal for me. So I answer the phone. Long story short, we end up becoming really, really close friends. And at one point over the next few months, 4, 5, 6 months, he tells me, I don't know if you have any interest in a media career. I don't say this to everybody. I think you could be really, really special at it if you wanted to try. Well, once again, to the surprise of nobody, I go all in. I quit my job with no backup job and decide I'm going to commit to this fully and start putting up these stupid little 2-minute Jesse Kelly brief videos. They're still on YouTube. They're actually hilarious. Well, turns out a TV company gets a hold of it. A radio company gets a hold of it. Michael Berry gets me a late night 1-hour radio show with the local station here in Houston. Late night, 7 o'clock. I mean, no one listens. No one listens. And it kills. So they give me drive time. And then a national syndication company, I've been doing radio like a year and a half, they call me and they're like, we want to syndicate this thing coast to coast. And then a TV company loved my radio show so much, they said, we want to give you a TV show. So what I'm saying to you is this entire thing, the national syndicated show and TV and all that, I have no business being here. I'm not educated. I have not been doing this my entire life. I have no idea how it happened. And the whole thing continues to take off like a rocket, and I'm the most blessed guy in the world. That's my story, Jeff.
That is an incredible story. Thank you so much for sharing that, man. There's a lot to talk about in there. I mean, the carpentry stuff. Did you grow up building things with your dad? Did you guys do like projects? Did you create stuff together?
No, not building stuff. We were different kind of construction. We were underground water and sewer line work. So it wasn't, I mean, it's not the sexy woodworking stuff, Jack, that I wish I actually knew how to do. I mean, I know my way around a saw and basic tools and stuff like that. It was in a ditch. I was in a trench looking up at trench walls, laying water pipe, laying sewer line. And I mean, look, it's very good work. I'm very proud of it. I mean, my old man, his business ended up doing very well. I'm thrilled. He's retired now. I'm proud of him. But it's tough work. And sometimes when you're laying these gigantic sewer line or water line pipes, they're so big you have to go inside of them, inside a pitch black line 100 meters back by yourself, and they're crawling in. And you have some moments when you're down there and it's hot and you're claustrophobic and it's dark. And you have some moments when you're down there thinking, man, maybe I should probably go do something else for a living. But construction, I mean, it's great work. That's why I love blue collar guys. That's how I grew up. That's my whole background.
What lessons did you take from your dad watching him grow up and working in the business and being an entrepreneur and being a small businessman. Like, what did you take from him? And just so I understand, were your parents still married the whole time you were a kid, and they were always together, and your dad was there? What did you take from him? What were like some of the key things that he taught you?
Parents were married. Parents still are married. My dad, one time, here's a story about my dad. My parents are trying to save up and buy a house. And again, it's just construction. I mean, you're not making a fortune, but trying to save up to buy a house. My old man gets an offer for a job that, honestly, I thought it was going to kill him. He gets an offer for a job, or he has to drive an hour to bust up sheetrock and things like that. He has to drive an hour, work 17 hours a day, 7 days a week, busting up sheetrock, and then turn around and drive back home. And in case you're not doing the math, that's 19 hours of a 24-hour day, 17 of those busting up sheetrock. And it was like for 6 months, but the time and a half and the overtime was so absurd, it would be enough for him to afford a down payment on a home. And he did it and never complained. And mom had a lunchbox waiting for him every night, and he would get home, have enough time to eat, collapse for a few hours, get right back up and do it again and do it again and do it again. When you hear stories like that about your dad, you learn about whining. You learn about focusing on your problems and woe is me and oh, it's so tough. In boot camp, here's a great story about my dad. In boot camp, at the end of Marine Corps boot camp, I don't know if they still do it, but to become a Marine, you have to do this horrible event, several days called the Crucible. They starve you. They try to, I mean, you guys are breaking legs. It's brutal. It's one of those final, coming of age things. The only thing I kept on my body during the Crucible was I kept a picture of my dad in the front part of my cap. So anytime I felt like quitting, and I felt like quitting, I would take that cap off and look at it and look at my dad and think, how am I supposed to tell that man I quit? That I wasn't tough enough, that I wasn't good enough to do it. So it just never happened. That's my dad, as tough as nails.
Man, that just hit me hard. Like, how are you going to let your dad down, right? Like,
Yeah.
dad that ground himself, worked himself 18, 19 hours a day to get you guys a house and digging around sheetrock, digging tunnels, crawling around underground, laying pipes, probably sewer work in there too. I mean, how are you going to let your dad down like that? The reason why I wanted to ask you about that, man, is because you and I both have done a lot of talking about fatherhood, about masculinity, about men's issues. And I think that you and I both see how all of our national issues really are like just sprout forth from these issues that we're having at home. We're having these issues at home with masculinity, with moms, with kids with dads, with the relationships between men and their children. And so I want to talk to you about how did you take these lessons that you learned from your dad and synthesize them and turn them into lessons for your kids today? Because the lessons are a little bit different. Of course, some of the things are universal, but now we're talking about, should you go to college? Should you not go to college? Should you stand up in school and talk, fight back against the CRT woke stuff, or should you just keep your head down? Like, how are you approaching raising your children today, given the political environment and how so much of the political nonsense is connected to our relationships with our children and with our wives, etc.? Like, what is your approach?
I have told my kids, and see, this gets tough because it's some of these lessons are hard to hear, but I have told my kids, you are supposed to be a man, a strong man. I don't care what society tells you. You are supposed to take care of your woman. You are supposed to lead your home when you get your home one day. You are not going to be led around by your nose. And every part of society is going to tell you, you're supposed to be the weak, effeminate buffoon who gets, I can hardly tie my shoes, honey. Would the all-powerful woman can't do that? No. You will take care of her. You will lead your home. You will guide your kids. You will speak. My sons are 10 and 12. I'm already having these conversations with them. And when it comes to politics and stuff like that, I tell them, everything you see on the news is a lie. You need to assume it's a lie. You need to question everything. Question me. Question everything you see and you think. And so I am constantly doing things with my sons that make them think. And I'm telling them about employment already. I tell them, what's your rule number one? If you ask my sons what rule number one for an employee is, they will say to you without hesitation, make your boss's life easier. And then you can ask them, should you bring your boss back problems? No, you bring your boss back solutions. I do that to them all the time now when I give them a task of, it can be something simple. Go get me a Phillips head screwdriver because I'm working on something. They know better than to, well, where are they? What does that look like? No. I gave you a task. You disappear, and I don't see you again until you're holding a Phillips head screwdriver in your hands. That's not because I'm a jerk. It's not because I don't know exactly, obviously, what one is and where they can find it. I want you to think. I want you to think and use your mind. I'm teaching my sons to think. When they sit down for dinner, I make them sit there with their back straight. I'm not trying to be a jerk or trying to make them Marines or something like that. A man sits with his back straight, and I'll show him, do I look good when I sit like this? Or do I look good when I sit with my back straight?
Let me see.
That's how a man stands. That's how a man sits. When they order food, look the waiter in the eye and speak up. Boys, especially boys, struggle with confidence. I know girls do too, but when you're young, you're not confident. You don't know who you are yet. Even Jack probably wasn't confident when he was. You don't even know who you are. So when you have a tendency when you talk to adults to, I would like a cheeseburger with fries. No, look him in the eye. I would like a cheeseburger with fries. This is what I would like on it. Thank you, sir. Please speak like a daggone man. And so that's the stuff. That's how we do it with them. I'm not raising them to make their lives easier. Although I love spoiling my kids, man. I love hanging out with them, spoiling them, talking to them. And I tell them this too. I am raising you because when you graduate high school, you are kicked out of my house. You're not staying here. It's time for the little birdie to fly. I am raising you now to make sure you can survive in this world when I kick you out. And they understand that. Everything I do is geared towards that. You survive when I kick you out.
That is hilarious because I have taken, I mean, look, yes, do I want my kids to be independent, self-starting, all those things? 100%. My son is already have a number of side hustles. He's got online business. He's got candy sales business. He's got snow shoveling business. He's got stencil your address numbers on your curb business. He's like that. I went out, 1 hour, I made $125. There you go. Right? 14 years old. How can you beat that? But when it comes to him finishing high school, I'm the opposite. I'm like, you don't even have to leave, bro. You could just hang out here. You could just hang out, just get your life together, make some money, like plan your future, see what's going to happen. Take a year off. I'm a big fan of a gap year if you can afford it, if you can do it. Really get out there and just explore the world. But I understand exactly your feeling there. And me personally, dude, my dad kicked me out of the house before I was finished with high school. I was living in an apartment when I had just turned 18.
Well, I have no problem. I have no problem with gap year or stuff like that, Jack. I don't even want them going to college. Go to a trade school. Right. Go, like you said, go explore. Go be a valet at a hotel in Mexico and chase women around for a year. I don't care. You're just not doing it in my house. And I want them to learn how to be poor. I mean, now, granted, we've never been wealthy. We're doing fine now. I'm not going to come on here and poor mouth anybody. But my kids don't know what poverty is. I struggle with this, and I don't know if you do too, but I struggle with trying to always give my kids perspective on how blessed they are. So if there is a poor part of town, I'll drive by it and I'll point things out. You see that house? Do you think you're better than that person? No, we're not. That's right. And remember that somebody lives there. That's somebody lives in that house. Somebody goes through hard things. Don't ever tell me you're bored. My kids know I'll freak if they ever tell me you're bored. You have 9,000 toys and things to do. If you tell me you're bored again, I'll light all your toys on fire in front of you. Don't ever say that to me ever again.
You won't be bored.
Don't tell me you're hungry. Don't tell me you're bored. You have a pantry full of food. You don't know what hunger is either. And I try to drive that home. Part of the reason I want them kicked out is I want you to go get a crappy apartment with a roommate who's a jerk on the bad part of town and find out how the other half lives because they don't know. What do my kids know?
I tried to explain to my kids some of the same thoughts about where we are in our context, and it's like, I'm doing great, but we live in an area where people aren't just doing great. These are like the ultimate rich folks in the country in Bethesda and Loudoun County in this area in DC, 7 of the top 10 richest counties in the country right here in DC. And so there's always somebody way richer everywhere around. So the kids have had some like humbling done in that regard too. But, Jesse, when I got doxxed, I got fired. I was out of work for a couple of years, and like they experienced what it was like to make decisions based on like how many dollars are available, like we can do this or we can do that, guys. And so they've actually really come up not spoiled. So now when I do try to spoil them and give them stuff, they're like awkward about it. And they get uncomfortable, and it's the best. It's the best because I can give them whatever I want or whatever I think they need, and then they love and appreciate every single bit of it. And they luckily, the kids just aren't spoiled. That's just such a feat, I think, for me. I'm really pleased by it. Not that we've had material excess to spoil them, but it's a mindset, it's a mentality, it's I'm owed this, I deserve this. My kids all know that they have to work for it because they work for everything here at the house. I wanted to circle back to something that you said earlier about leading your family. What does that mean for you? Because I think you and I, when people want to criticize us, they'll call us misogynists, woman haters, whatever, and they'll say things like we're Neanderthals and whatnot because they hear something like, "Well, I'm the leader of my family." But leadership has all kinds of forms, right? Like I believe in the servant leader model, right? Where my job as leader is to set the mission and then help everyone else achieve that mission. That's my job. So when I say I'm leading my family, I'm not knocking people over the head and saying, this is what we're doing, deal with it. What is your version of leadership in family? And how do you balance the fact that your wife, I'm sure, is a tremendous lady. I'm sure she's super smart and has a lot of great ideas. How do you incorporate all that and still be the leader and be kind and all of these things, Jesse? How are you not really a Neanderthal, my friend?
Well, I mean, I am a Neanderthal and a total, complete scumbag. But to what you just said, that is what leadership is. I mean, leadership is serving and things like that. I do lead my home. I am the head of the household, but my wife doesn't want for anything. She spent all Mother's Day having me making her breakfast and bringing it to her in bed and putting on a brand new necklace. And my wife is not some quiet little church mouse. We have arguments about it. She has strong opinions about things. That this is not a drill instructor versus Marine Corps recruit relationship by any stretch of the imagination. But at the same time, what our society has done, what the West has done, and it's really pathetic, our culture has convinced men they're pathetic, weak buffoons, and it's convinced women they're oppressed and have been silenced and they have things really hard here, and it's absolutely destroying the happiness of both of them. There is no happiness for a dude being led around by his woman, and there's no happiness for a woman leading around a dude. And part of the reason our West has gotten so soft and feminized and feeling-oriented and pathetic is because men haven't stepped up. People complain about feminists all the time. I have a good time making fun of them, don't get me wrong. I don't blame feminists, I blame men. If men were strong enough to say absolutely not, then you don't have a feminist movement. However, nature abhors a vacuum, and the lack of male leadership, women will step up, and you have that what we have now, and it's an absolute disgrace.
Yeah. Sometimes, are you familiar with the phrase shit test?
Yes.
Yes,
I am.
Yes. So it feels like an entire giant cultural society-wide shit test. It's like, are you guys going to let us get away with this? You are? Damn. Right? There's like a little bit of hope inside when a shit test occurs. It's really a radar ping for leadership. It's a radar ping for masculine energy. It's like, are you still leading me? Are you still masculine? Is your frame still strong? Do you still look at me and chuckle? And because that is what actually the shit test is all about, is trying to a woman to become confirmed and to be reassured in that. And when you fail a shit test, that's when everything falls apart. And that's where we are sort of nationally failing the shit test. And it's going to take guys like you to step up and to teach your kids how to step up and have, this energy sort of spread. How do we spread this energy? How do we turn our male citizens of America, if you can even call them that anymore, it's pathetic what we see out there. It's pathetic. How are we going to turn the tide? What do we do, Jason?
You're already doing it, Jack, for one. You're already doing it by the message you put out on your show, by the message you put out on your social media, and by how you raise your kids. But for anybody out there watching this right now, and I know we have a bunch of people are, if you're a dude and you're wondering how you can do that, how you can spread it, it's your kids. It's your kids. That's your responsibility. I mean, it sounds like cavemanish, but the truth is you're going to die one day, and those kids are going to take over this society. It's your job to make sure they're ready to do so. Your kids are the way you can really, really change things. Now, you and I are blessed to have a platform where we can be more vocal about this and hopefully influence others in that way. But if you don't have a platform or a Twitter account or a show or anything like that, raise your kids that way. Friends and family can be influenced a lot. Nobody in the world, I had a guy tell me this one time, nobody in the world, no two people on the planet have the exact same circle, meaning people circle, family and friends and whatnot. Nobody else has your exact circle. So you can affect your circle in ways that I could never.
You got to start with the kids, guys. First, actually, start with yourself. You have to start with yourself. Look at Jesse. Jesse's not a big fat slob, even though he's talking about eating double smoked shacks for lunch. When you work out and you watch everything else, you can eat that cheeseburger every once in a while. But seriously, guys, you got to start with yourself. If you can't lead yourself, if you can't lead your body, if you can't lead your own health, how are you going to lead anybody else? How are you going to lead your family? How are you going to lead your kids? How could you lead your community if you can't even walk down the street wearing a uniform that says, I'm in control of my life? And of course, the benefits to taking care of yourself physically go way beyond anything like that of status and other things. It's a cascade of benefit. I always say saving the world starts in the squat rack. I've got two things here in my basement. I've got my studio. I am in my basement, unfortunately. And I have my squat rack over here. These are my two main areas of focus outside of the kids. And for that, you know, that is step one. Step one, being strong,
Yep.
actually being physically strong, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually strong as well. Jesse, what do you do? Because to me, these are the components of personal sovereignty. They start with physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual integrity. And by integrity, I mean a whole, something that's not disintegrated, something that is integrated into one thing. How do you fill up your spiritual side, Jesse? What is your spiritual life like, sir? Because to me, it's an essential component to doing this thing that we got to do for us and for the country.
Well, it is an essential component. I mean, me personally, I'm a Christian. I was raised Christian. My family are Christian. We go to church. We're non-denominational Christians. As for the nation needs that too. And people get so uncomfortable when you talk about religion in a country. Mm-hmm. But every powerful nation, every nation, period, of any kind in the history of mankind has had a religion. Whether it's your religion or my religion or whatever people believe in, the religion of a nation is like the sun, and the rest of the nation, everything else revolves around it. It is the center part of it. Even a tiny tribe somewhere has a religion. Mega powerful nations have religions. Even if they're disgusting religions like the Aztecs where they're sacrificing kids alive, they still had one because it's what everything else comes from. It's where your culture, your laws, it's where everything else comes from. And a big part of why we're failing in this country, Jack, is we ran away from God. Church attendance is at record lows right now. And so when you don't have that, because there's some atheists right now scoffing at what I'm saying, and I don't care. But if you're scoffing at it, hear me out here. If you don't have that sun you're revolving around, then what are you doing? You're just fluttering your way through space. And so you get suckered in by this and suckered in by that because you don't have a mooring of some kind. You have no central founding. And believe me, I'm not preaching at anybody here. There is not a single Christian on the planet who's worse than me. Not one. And I really do mean that. I'm a terrible human being. But as a country, I understand we need it. And as a family, you asked how to lead. As a family, I know they need it. I mean, I need it too. Obviously, I don't exempt myself from that, but my kids have to have that. They're going to grow up with that. Now they're going to be men and they're going to make their own choices, but they're going to know the direction I want them to go, and we'll see which way they end up.
You know, I'm half Jewish, half Catholic. I had a bar mitzvah when I was a kid. I also went to Sunday mass, right? I've seen both and I participated in both. And I think because of the confusion and the clash, I think I lost it. And I'll tell you, there was definitely a time in my life where I was not just atheist, but like pretty hardcore, right? Like it's clear, it's totally obvious. What's wrong with you people? And, you know, thankfully, I grew out of that. And I came to understand that there's got to be something. Now, I don't know what it is exactly, but there is something out there that is bigger than me, that has more power than me, that I should probably look up to with reverence. And I do totally, completely, 100% understand the value of religion in a society. And whether or not, you know, we have an official national religion, there's no question that America was built on Christian values. And so in many ways, it is a Christian nation because of that. And we have definitely drifted away. And not only have we drifted away, but we have replaced it with something that acts like a religion, that does not give the benefit of the religion that we would like to see. Jesse, what are we going to do bit by bit, guys like you and me, to fight back against this new religion, critical race theory, social justice, all of these guys? It is a religion. It is a religion. How are we going to, in the next, let's say 12 months, guys like you and me, but then also like 5 years as a nation, what is the plan? What is the Jesse Kelly plan to save America? That's what I want to know.
Balkanize. I do not believe the federal system can be saved. I think it's so unbelievably rotted and corrupt from the top down. And I'm not just talking about elected officials. Elected officials are always scumbags. When you have the FBI, CIA, DOJ, EPA, military, when they're all going the same way, you're getting to a tipping point here where you can't unpack it. So when I say balkanize, what I'm not saying is surrender. I'm not saying that. When I say that to people, what I mean is move to an area where they share your values. If you can, I understand a lot of people have jobs and family situations where they can't do that. If you can, move to an area where they share your values, and then don't move there and just kind of hang out and have a couple beers on the weekends. Move there and be more purposeful fortifying that area from the communists than you were in your last area. Meaning move to a red area and run for school board. I don't know anything about school. Neither do the dirtball communists who are on your school board now. You go, run for school board, and don't just try to go there. I just want to take politics out of it. No, that's a loser's defensive mentality, and that's why we lost this country. You go run for school board, and you make sure they're teaching your values in the school. Kids are taught values by somebody. You're sending your child to somewhere to learn from an adult for 7-8 hours a day. They're going to learn values. Make sure they're your values. Go run for city council. Go run for state house. Ban these things from them. We're going to have to do things now because we've gotten to a system where we're so corrupt. We're going to have to do things now that make you uncomfortable. You know, if you don't want things to be uncomfortable, you better pull the plant out before the roots get too deep. Once the roots are deep enough, as they are now, there's going to be some dirt that comes with it when you pull it out. And that sucks. And it's going to be painful. And it's going to be a rough next 10, 20 years. But it is necessary. It's that or give up. So we are doing a tactical retreat where we are going to go fortify other parts of the place. And then from there, we could worry about taking back the rest of it. But if you are a person on the right now and you're stuck in some deep blue area and you don't move, well, you're actually hurting me by staying there because you're lost. You're behind enemy lines. You're going to get gobbled up and you're lost. And I could have used you on my wall, but now I don't have you on my wall because you stayed there because you wanted to. Oh, that's not true. We don't surrender. Tactical retreat is one of the most important things a general can do. George Washington gave you a country because he was the best tactical retreater in the history of mankind. Tactical retreat's really important. You have to do that now.
So when you say balkanize, you're not saying, hey, let's immediately break up the country and start having some Serb-Bosnian type conflict over here. What you're talking about is use your freedom of movement that we still have, move to a jurisdiction where there are people who reflect your values and hunker down with people that share your values. That's step one. What comes after that, the stress on the federal system, the disintegration, the increasing complexity of everything in life, the way that it seems like the friggin' thing is just shaking and all bolts and pieces are falling off of it. You just don't even know when it's just going to completely come apart, even though the speed seems to keep picking up. You got to start with finding people who share your values. Jesse, what are those values that people can, that you're looking for in other people that are common values that you would want to build a community around, that you want to attract other people to share those values? Because I got to tell you, in the liminal order, we are a values-based organization. It's an all-men's organization. We've got almost 600 guys all around the country, even all around the world. We've had meetings all over the country. We've had 30 different meetings, maybe. We just had a big national meetup last weekend. We had about 60 guys in a cornfield in Illinois. A lot of shooting, a lot of smoking, a lot of drinking, a lot of feats of strength and barbecuing and grilling. It was an amazing time. But we came together because of our values. Our 3 core values: masculinity, brotherhood, and sovereignty. These are the things that we hold dear. They're for us as men. These are the things that we think are going to improve our lives. They're going to improve the lives of our community and hopefully our nation. For you, sir, what are the values for you that are in your mind when you say, like, I want to build a community with people with like-minded values? What comes to mind first for you?
I want people who are polite. I want people who are family-oriented people, meaning you care about your children, you care about raising your children, you care about the safety of the neighborhood, and I want people who are anti-communists. I mean, I tell people this all the time now. I'm not just saying that. These people are communists. The people who have taken over our country are absolute bloodthirsty communists. They're no different than communists have always been. They are 100% totally fine if you die, if you oppose them. That's who they are. And unless you're willing to openly push back against them, then you're not going to be my people, because they're not going to give up. It is their religion, like you talked about earlier. It is not a political ideology. They eat, sleep, and breathe it. They will die for it. They will kill for it. And they have done so several times throughout history. And freedom cannot exist beside communism any more than a block of ice can exist beside a fire. It does not. One must go. And so they're either going to go or you're going to go. And I don't want to be around people who don't understand that. Because right now, the biggest problem I'm having is not the left. I know they're a bunch of dirty scumbag communists. My biggest problem is the right thinking this is some kind of, wow, it's just Democrats versus Republicans. Let's care about the midterms and maybe 2024. We have so many bigger problems as a culture than the midterm elections or the presidential elections. And if you, I mean, that's a good step. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but if you think that is going to solve something for what we're facing right now, you greatly underestimate just how big the problems are.
The problems are gigantic. And what we see, and interviewed Christopher Caldwell, who wrote a terrific book called The Age of Entitlement, where he lays out how what we really have are 2 competing constitutions in the United States. We have 2 competing regimes. We have 2 competing notions of liberty, and they're incompatible. There's no negotiating. There's no, well, we can compromise on this, we can compromise on that, because at fundamental first principle level, they're diametrically opposed. One is make space for people to be themselves, and the other is to take from everybody else to fill up this other guy over here. And these are contradictory, they're irreconcilable. And as we see now with the equity notion, right? This is the communist bit. It's the equity notion that has now made its way all the way to, from just crazy college kids all the way up the chain, with a little quick stop at the Kavanaugh hearings, all the way up the chain now to the joint session of Congress, the first address by President Biden, talking about equity, talking about white supremacy as a top terrorist threat and all this stuff. So it's really taken over everything. Now the question is going to be, like, to what extent are they going to be able to spread that throughout the rest of the system? And at what point are we all, the rest of us, going to acknowledge the fact that these things are irreconcilable? There's no negotiating. It's like Ricky Tikki Tavi. It's like there's a mongoose and a cobra in a sack, and only one of them is coming out. How do we make sure we're the ones that come out? That's the question. We're going to have to fight back. It's going to take more, Jesse. This is so beyond 1 year here. It's going to take more than just finding people with your common values. What is the 5 to 10 year outlook? What do you think is going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years? Make your prediction. Yeah.
I think this country is going to break up. Whether that happens in 5 to 10 years, I don't think so. That seems a little soon. I think 50 years from now, we'll be 2 or 3 different countries. And I think it is that drastic. And this is what I mean when I say that. I think we will have states breaking off and joining and breaking off together. We cannot coexist like this. We simply cannot. If we didn't have so many guns on the right, I would say we will flat out have people on the right thrown in gulags. That's how serious these people are. But the one thing they failed at is the one thing that should have been priority 1 for them, and that's disarming the other side. Since they didn't do that, they are not going to slow down on this stuff. I want people to understand this critical race theory, and men can be women now and all this other stuff. This is not the end. There is no end to communism. There's no end to cultural Marxism. They only look at what they haven't destroyed yet. The communist never wakes up in the morning and says, Nice. We took over all this. You know what? I think I'm done for now. That doesn't even enter their mind. There's always something else and always something else and always something else. They will never stop. This is a beast that will not be sated. And so I believe that we will continue to see, regardless of what I say, we're already seeing the balkanization of the country. We're seeing California lose congressional seats, New York losing congressional seats, Texas is gaining them, Florida is gaining them. People are already, even when they're intimidated to speak out publicly against it, they're already instinctively looking at this filth and saying to themselves, no, I don't want my kids raised there. I don't want my family raised there. And what that's going to do is, now I'm happy it's happening, but as far as the overall health of a nation, that's a bad thing. The country is going like this, and it's going like this quickly, and there's no indication they're ever going to stop or slow down because communists do not. And we can't either, so it's inevitable. We are going to break up. And I don't know why people think that's radical when I say that. Go look at a map at the history of the world, the year 0, then the year 500, then the year 1000, then look at the year 1500. Countries breaking up, rising and falling, starting and failing is the history of the world. If you say we're not going to break up, I say on a long enough timeline, you're the naive one.
Right. I mean, come on, Jesse. Don't you know that everything's been the same forever, always? It's never changed. Kingdoms have never risen. They've never fallen. Empires have never come into being and broken apart. It would be unnatural for there not to be a cycle to this thing. And I've been studying a lot about Rome. I've been watching these great lectures series. It's been incredible. I watched a 26 episode lecture series on just the rise of Rome. Now we got another 26 to go for the empire and then another 26 to go for the fall. But it's been fascinating for me to see the parallels. And oh man, it's not very encouraging when you look at it like that. And some of the things that stand out to me are like disaffected, servicemen and military workers, and a lack of gentlemen farmers and citizen farmers, and a disconnection from the heartland, and all kinds of very similar things where everybody in society is disappointed. Nobody's happy, yet somehow the country is richer than ever, but people are feeling poorer than ever. People are feeling left out and left behind. It's very common. There's a lot of commonalities what's happening there. But the balkanization is already happening in some respects when you have these things, the sanctuary cities, right? So you've got sanctuary cities on the left and on the right, right? You've got sanctuary cities on the left for immigration and other things. You got sanctuary counties on the right for 2A, for Second Amendment stuff. Both sides are about, cannabis and that's sort of decentralized sanctuary cannabis cities as well. So it's already happening, right? The states and localities are like, you know what, feds, F you. And there's going to be more of that happening. And frankly, I support it just like you do. I mean, I would be an extreme federalist, right? Like push all the power down as far as you can to the localities and to the states and to keep the feds out of everything. I mean, it's taken us so long to get here. It might take us a long time to get to where we're going. But if you look at complexity science and this thing called critical self-organized criticality, like things build and tension that you can't see builds and it builds and it builds, and finally like one little piece of sand sends the whole thing into a cascade. And I think that might be something that happens here in the United States, a catalyzing event of some kind. But in the meantime, we're going to start breaking apart just bit by bit, as you talked about. In the last couple minutes that we've got here, let's do a little bit to actual politics stuff. I mean, what do you think? Two questions: who is actually running Joe Biden? Because I don't think it's Joe Biden. And the second question is really hardcore politics kind of stuff. What do the midterms look like in your mind, and what's going to happen there?
Susan Rice is running Joe Biden. That's something people have to understand. Susan Rice is an absolute leftist radical nut job. I've heard from now 4 or 5 different sources that I trust that tell me Susan Rice is the one running the show up there. And that is why the Biden administration has actually been far, far left of Barack Obama. And it's not because Joe Biden is left of Barack Obama. It's because Joe Biden has dementia. That's why you hardly ever see him at night, because people with dementia get what they call sundowning. They lose all their functionality once the sun goes down. So that's why you see him in the morning. That's why you see him with his mouth hanging open. That's why you see him with his feet shuffling, and that's why you see his arms really stiff when he walks around. Oftentimes he has to have somebody take his arm and walk him around because we do not have a functional president. We threw out the other guy because his tweets were mean and elected some guy whose brain is turned into tapioca pudding, and now Susan Rice is leading the country hard left. I have a Secret Service source that I don't personally have, so I don't want to act like I do have this guy, but I have a guy who has a guy who has a guy kind of a thing, and he tells me there are Secret Service agents, several in the White House, that don't think Joe Biden will last till August as President of the United States of America. They think he's going down. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, and it's not a first-hand source, but I've been told that. That's one. Two, Democrats will lose horrifically at the midterms because Democrats are horrible. Republicans are absolutely dreadful, and the country hates them, and they should because they're weak and spineless and pathetic. And so they eventually throw out Democrats and throw out Republicans and elect Democrats, and then they find out, oh my gosh, these guys are actually way worse than the Republicans were anyway. Let's bring the Republicans back in. So the Republicans are going to win big in the midterms, and the Democrats won't be able to do anything. The good news for people when it comes to Biden is this: legislatively, there's pretty much nothing he's going to be able to accomplish. Nothing. He might be able to get a big infrastructure bill through, and there will be lots of damage done to the country over the next 4 years, but they just do not have the votes for this insane stuff they're pulling. So that's a good thing.
That is a good thing. Jesse Kelly, what about you, sir? What is next for you? You sticking in media? You making another run? What are you going to do, buddy? Because you know what, man? I know you have a lot of effect. I know you have a lot of impact. You got a big audience. People listen to you. You're making change in that regard. No doubt about it. My mom, sometimes she says, she just waves things off. She says, history has a way of taking care of these things. I'm like, no, Mom. Men, women too, men have to do things in order to make change in history. Is there more public service for you in the future, Jesse?
No. No, and I don't say that because I don't believe that I have a duty to this country. I still feel that and always will. I say that because, again, by the grace of God, and I certainly don't deserve it, I have a big enough platform now that I believe I can affect more change and better change doing what I'm doing than being just another vote in Congress somewhere. I mean, now I have senators and congressmen that call and text me and ask me about the statement they should take, the stance they should take, how they should word something. I lose that if I run for office. So I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing until they fire me.
Indeed. I appreciate that, which I don't think is going to be anytime soon, sir. You're absolutely killing it. Where should people find you, Jesse? Where should they look out for your stuff? How should they follow you? Where should they sign up? Where should they subscribe?
You can find the Jesse Kelly Show. It might be playing in a city near you. If not, you can find a podcast anywhere things are podcasted, iHeart and Google and Spotify and iTunes and all those places. And my TV show's on the channel that's called The First. It's on every night, 9 p.m. Eastern time, if you want to look at me while I talk.
You know, you have a voice for radio and a face for film. That's a hell of a combination. So congratulations to you on that one, sir. Thank you so much for coming on the show and talking to me. I really appreciate it. I've had a great time. It's guys like you. We need to stick together and find more guys like us and get together and make a gang and do what we need to do in order to take care of our family, our community, and our nation. So thank you very much, Jesse. I really appreciate it. Everybody else out there, hit subscribe. Share this thing. Everybody tells me my show is woefully undersubscribed and there's not enough views. How is there not more views on here? Well, I'll tell you guys, one way you can do it is by sharing this show. Send it out over your social media. Tell your friends about it. Hit subscribe. And more people will listen, and then we'll get the message out. So I appreciate that from everybody. Jesse, thank you very much again, sir. Appreciate your time, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Be good, my brother. Thank you for having me.